Thank you, Henry. Yeah, that's kind of a nice way of saying you've got four older guys with over 30 years of experience in the medical device industry. So we can talk about, the internet crash in the late 90s, if you want to talk about that, or 9/11, or 08, 09 crisis, COVID crisis, post-COVID crisis. We got it all covered up here. But no, it's a great panel, and we figured we'd jump into questions versus go through the detail of our background. But what you have here is, three entrepreneurs who have over 30 years of experience each. I think collectively hundreds of millions of dollars of seed to B financing between myself and Todd and Michel as entrepreneurs, and then billions of dollars really in capital raised through IPOs and exits as well through all those tumultuous 30 years that we mentioned. And then Assaf is a great investor out of Israel and has a perspective, having also invested through a number of those cycles. And so I'd like to just maybe jump right in with questions, and we really want to just have an open dialogue. And if there's questions as we get a little further in, we'll ask for participation as well. So guys, how do you perceive the environment? Is it as bad as kind of Henry laid out? Was I right that there have been worse times? And is it different between Israel, Europe, U.S.? We got a little geographic distribution here as well. So, Assaf, how do you assess the environment today?
Not just in Israel. I think globally we all been facing not just difficult times. I think the atmosphere, the dynamic. It's not just the specific parameters of the economy or the rebate, the interest. It's a totally different ballgame. And in that sense, I think, we've been seeing, we're doing Sanara, we're doing both seed A and B rounds investment, by the way, in digital health, medical devices, and bioconvergence technologies. We're having now 24 portfolio companies, and most of them are looking for funding, most of them are looking for capital. Now, it is different, we may touch about it, it's different to do a seed stage, A round, B rounds, than growth capital or private equity capital. Nonetheless, the atmosphere and the dynamic is totally different, and it's hard to get. I mean, every $10 million, $20 million are so hard to get.
When you say it's a different game, it's a different game from a historical 30-year game, or different than the last 5 years?
No, it's a cyclical nature. I think we've all been there. It's a cyclical nature, we know that. But nonetheless, when it happens, we as Sanara still see companies every now and then come to us, with no revenues. Maybe they got an FDA with $40, $50 million pre-money valuation. This will not fly anymore. This will not fly anymore.
Right.
And this is when I'm saying it's a different ball game. In some cases, the mindset, there should be a paradigm shift, both from the management team, the entrepreneurs, as to the acknowledgement that these are different times. Yeah. And if there's a need to go to a down round, there's a need to go to a down round with all the outcomes and consequences. Sure. But I think it will be another quarter or two before they all capture that. Valuations eventually will go down. It will be those who still have capital from 2021, they're okay somehow. But nonetheless, in the VC side, typically you raise for 2 years. And if you're not accumulating enough capital, or you don't have enough resources, non-dilutive, credit line, whatever it may be, companies will stumble into difficulties, and they need to act now, immediately now, not to wait for the next quarter or two.
Todd, how about from your perspective? You're on a number of startup boards, plus you're running a public company, but you came from Active, which raised money through this last tumultuous cycle. How do you assess things?
So I look at it, we heard, money was easy to get 5 years ago. Then COVID hit and it was really hard, and I think the best companies raised money. And today, the best companies are going to raise money. I think it's a tough cycle, but I think it's great. It's level setting. It's not just free anymore because someone has a robot. We're just going to give it money, and or someone has. Outcomes matter, leadership matters, teams matter, and I actually think there won't be a great company that doesn't survive this. There's going to be a lot of average companies or average leadership teams that won't survive it. But I think it's a great time because I look at it as you have LPs that give you money to invest, not to put in your bank. You have to go find great companies and put that money to work. And I think it's a great challenge for the team. Yes, you have to manage money really carefully and your burn rate, but I don't look at it as a down thing. I just look at it as the cream rises. Find out how good you are, so be selfish. And I'm either good or I stink, and I'm going to find out real fast.
Michel, you're on a number of digital companies here in Europe, startups, earlier stage. You also chairman of public companies, on public boards, but more of a European-centric view. Anything different that you see? And you've been involved
Yeah,
across
exactly.
your career with global medical device growth companies.
So I think building a little bit on what Todd was sharing with the group, these are rough but very interesting times. I think some of us with gray hair have seen those cycles, and I think this time, not unlike the previous cycles, it's back to basic economics and back to fundamentals. To that point, for example, in digital health, not so long ago, VCs were giving money and not only not regarding so much of time to profitability, time to be cash accretive, it was no, all about land grab and grow your market, geographic expansion, and so on. And don't worry about that. You'll raise the hundreds of millions in 2, 3, 5 years. Well, now VCs are more prudent. There's money, but they're more prudent. So perfect execution, under promise, over deliver, and have a clear unmet need, and try to shorten your time to profitability. I think those companies will succeed in raising money in good conditions, but it's not easy at the moment.
Yeah. What you guys have all kind of mentioned this theme about back to normal or back to basics and good companies survive. Given your experiences through these cycles, we've got a lot of first-time CEOs here who've raised some money, likely here because they're want to raise more money. What advice are you giving those people in your portfolio?
I think just relating and acknowledging what was just stated, back to basic, I would say back to question marks. Honestly, we've been working with exclamation marks for the last few years, deploying capital and thinking growth is sacred and all of those cliches to some extent, which are rightfully so being put. But these times, I think we need to go back to question marks as to specifically early stage companies, what is the right use cases? In some cases, we see a core technology as a fascinating core technologies that can do that and that and that. Is it the low-hanging fruit? Is it something else? What justifies a scalable, sustainable, and saleable business model? Like sometimes when I'm talking about a business model, the crucial, specifically, by the way, Michel, in terms of digital health companies, this is not medical devices companies where you have kind of a routine. It's tough, but still. In digital health, everything is about a business model. Despite whatever the best technologies that you may have, the best technologies, but it's the business model that defines that. And then it has to be saleable, scalable, sustainable, like a Superman, like the 3 S's. And
What were the 3 S's again? Let's make sure they get
First of all, saleable. Like I've been seeing dozens of technologies which are not saleable. The entrepreneurs, they fall in love with that technology, but it's not a product, and definitely it's not a saleable. When you look into the...
it has to have a product market fit. Where
it's a product market
solving
fit.
A problem.
Exactly. Those are the basics. Those are the basics. But nonetheless, even if you do, you have as a team, the executive team, the board, we need to ask ourselves in these times, again and again, these are the question marks that I was referring to. Is this the right business model? Could this be scalable in such a way that it will be attractive enough for VCs to step in these specific times? Because it's always a matter of opportunities. And I think to distinguish those times from 2 years ago, those are the question mark that we should look into, and not to be afraid to do some pivot kind of a thinking or to explore other ways. Otherwise, in some cases, that have saved so many companies. The ability to stop, look into reality as is, and say, could we make enough money out of this? Should this be the first product? Would there be a reimbursement in that and that? Right. And maybe take a company to pivot the company to something else, or a spin-off or whatever. But those are the time to do so.
I think about what would your question of as a first-time CEO or entrepreneur. One of the things to think about is I think it's not that different than if you're running a big company. One thing you should always be asking your team is, how would I sell against me right now in our device? So if you're a first-time entrepreneur and I'm going to an investor, what problem are you solving? Do you have a solution searching for a problem because you fell in love with your technology, or is there a real problem out there that you have a solution for
And that
There's
someone is willing to pay for
right,
it.
and there's a real market for it and the market opportunity. And I think that's the same thing. You always, so I would go into it. You don't have to, first-time entrepreneur, what's the market conditions? What's the problem that I'm solving that my product will make a difference? There's no other option, or the options available don't deliver. And here is our business model if it's digital, whether it's a subscription, whether it's whatever that's going to be. And be brief. The whole story of, well, in 5 years, we're going to get our FDA clearance, and we're running these clinical trials. And that's really important in biotech and different things because it's different. But with medtech, I just get to the point, demonstrate you have great team leadership. You also make sure that you're balanced. If you're a commercial leader, make sure you have technical expertise on your team. If you're a physician or an engineer with technical expertise, make sure you have commercial leadership on your team that knows how to operationalize, because that's very difficult to think, well, I know how good this product is because I've been a surgeon for 10 years. Doesn't do a thing for the business market, and investors will see right through that.
Michel, anything?
Yeah, great points. And if I look at ourselves, so many early stage companies survive and thrive by reinventing themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about.
You're
Changing, right?
You're thrown out the door. You come back by the window, and that's particularly true today for CEOs. Is be ready to reinvent yourself. In digital health, you may have to change your business model, but be proactive. And maybe for the investors on the board and so on, trust your management and don't put too much pressure, but that they should focus on execution, but also have the courage to reinvent themselves. The business models are going to change in digital health because of the economics of the environment.
Yeah, I think this is a point I would really emphasize that I've found here over the last few years, is that a lot of times as a first-time CEO, you've gone out and raised money based upon a vision. You're going to do this. Then you get feedback that it's not this, it probably should be that. And then I encourage them, change. You need to change the financing strategy, change the product, change. Change is fine. They're like, but I promised to do this, and this is failure. No, failure to not change is the problem. All a venture capitalist wants is a return on their capital. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. So if there's a better option, let's pursue it. So, like at Volcano, Michel and I, we're going to be a vulnerable plaque company. We do our big thermography, clinical study. The data's terrible. I go to the VCs and say, hey, you want your $30 million back? No, we want you to change and figure something out. And, we went and figured something completely different out using some of the technology in a different area. Same thing at Digirad. We basically failed to develop a solid-state gamma camera for all of nuclear medicine. We had to take a different technology to create it for nuclear cardiology. It was a complete restart, but we created a different model. And I find I'm just with anchoring with value, a lot of times people anchor to their idea. And so any thoughts on how to coach and help some of these CEOs, whether it's anchoring to valuation and changing their financing strategy, anchoring to a strategy and willingness to change? And is it true that you just want to return, not,
No. I mean, we're very proactive. We're very proactive with our companies. I hope not to be too much of a threat, so-called. But one thing that I think it came to me in the last 2 years, this is an analogy we've been using. I mean, everybody's using it, the valley of death. There's not just one. Typically, you do a valley of death, before you get revenues, and then you don't have enough, you still need to have external funding. But there are valleys of death. And this is like a three-dimensional play, if you will. All of a sudden, you may stumble into lack of being able to get your reimbursement on time. Your clinical data is not enough. Even if you have like 2 or 3 providers, hospitals that bought the technology or ran through a validation process, this does not yet bring a justified business model. So it's like a game that you need to play in any given moment, multiple dimension of the valleys of death, who might be as a threat, and to consider again and again and again the assessment while progressing with companies. Just to illustrate, we have one of our companies which is on the device side, a medical device company called Lidus, which is doing small blood vessels anastomosis for microsurgery. We have two strategics investing, one from the US, one from Asia. We've been thinking that instead of a long suturing process, this will be a plug-and-play device that cuts down from 1 hour to maybe 5 minutes when a child cuts his hand or whatever it may be. But it's a matter of time. Then you ask the question mark, is it saving time? Will there be more procedures? Will the physician use it, the surgeon? Will it turn surgeons into microsurgeons? Because you have to have a specialist capabilities and expertise doing that. So all of those bits and bytes with cancer patients, for instance, when they potentially when they have your blood vessels potentially collapsing because of certain therapeutic procedures and others, those are questions that should be asked. And then eventually when you surface them, you can truly come with something which is quite robust. As to that, as you said, Todd, this is a true market need. Those are redundant when we say it, but it's a true hardcore market need that someone is willing to pay for that. And you need to bring a lot of questions before you are able to address that and validate it properly.
I think without going too pragmatic or tactical, so many early stage companies now, they're struggling to raise their money. So what do they go to? They go to with one bridge, two bridge. Well, you cannot live on bridges. And therefore, in terms of business model and coming back to realities, a few years ago, it would be, in 2028, 2030, we'll have 100,000 patients out of our digital health platform, and don't worry about profitability there. Well, no longer, I believe, today. So how about good old trick, go to a more monopolistic niche? How about not maybe 100,000 or 5,000, 10,000? How can you get to 3, 4, 5 million revenue, accretive, and basically how to get ahead of the curve again? Because as soon as you reach a lower cash burn, profitability, basically you regain control of your company. Because then raising money becomes an opportunity based on a project standpoint, not so much an obligation to survive for the company. It's easier said than done to get ahead of the curve, but I think that's why being careful and under promise, over deliver, to use the old adage.
And it's not a founder entrepreneur. The second you get funding, it's not your company anymore.
Yeah.
You're now the leader. The investors need you to lead the company, and if you can do that, that's great. But the thought is, my company, I know what we're doing, I know what's right. If you're asking for funding, you can't have both feelings because you have to be willing to change. So if you have that feeling, this is my baby, this is my company, you should believe that as a leader anyway, but you have to be willing to, because it's not your company anymore.
So I think in all the companies we built, companies you've financed and helped build, we've all used various financing sources, government programs and funding, strategics, debt, VCs, strategic partners, off-selling it. Can you I found in the last periods where capital's so easier, freer flowing, you don't have to explore those 7 or 8 other things. Can you give examples or ideas, how you've used alternative sources to help get you through periods of time, get to milestones, get to value inflection before you raise conventional venture?
Well, I started a number of companies in Belgium, and Belgium is one of the programs where on both sides of the linguistic barrier, the governments have been really partners in investing, either via non-dilutive funding or as well as dilutive funding, but with another different scope. Quebec is the same thing with Investissement Québec. So I think it's all of the above. But I think selecting the right partner remains important. If you're struggling for money, you tend to take the money wherever it comes from. But the strategic alliance, and aligning on the mission remains important. So, or free mind or other approaches, I think are very valuable sources of non-dilutive funding.
I mean, obviously, early stage NIH funding and different things like that. But I think even local subsidies and to run your business, it's not always going to be cash in the door, but you can save a lot of money if you take advantage of people, facilities, and are subsidized to certain by staying in a certain town, a certain area. Geographically, I think those are options. So it's not just always the dollars and cents that you have to think about in this case to try to fund your company, because the longer you keep it alive, if you save money too, you're also funding it in downtimes in addition to the cash that comes in. And the one thing I would bring up, in a great time, I remember when I was starting to raise money, I had a group of VCs, they were wonderful partners, but they told me it's a sign of weakness if you use a bank to help you raise money.
So
Right, but the way I look, no, I look at it right now that, what's my objective? I need money. Okay, I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna get money. I don't, so if someone's going to help me bring more people to the table, I'm going to do that. So I just think we have to be open to take advice from everybody, but at the end of the day, what is your objective? What do you need, and how else can you go get it? I'm not saying go run to the banks, but use all your options, and especially in this environment.
what we typically do and advise our companies is to initially map the landscape of investments, like those kind of 7, 8 verticals, as you mentioned, and then, try to identify more, first of all, I think in these times, strategics are becoming much more important. It may take longer, there may be a different due diligence, they may have different set of requirements for such and such product in order to be able to invest in it. But even if we look into the angels arena now, say that we would have had 200, 300 of those in Israel just investing in medical devices, now they are gone, they're vanished. Nonetheless, if this is let it be a fintech company, one of our companies is a fintech, I've been telling them, go to gynecologists for those who made kind of money, they will relate to that. They will be willing, if you're trying to raise 5, raise now 1.5, like interim round, use safe mechanism, do whatever means that you need to. But in terms of who to approach, you need to approach those who truly understand. So they did not vanish for good, those investors, the angel investors. But if you're trying to approach, plastic surgeons in one cases or others, try to make it as a niche, specifically a niche to be synergistic with the product that you are developing, and it could be any other area, oncology or whatever it may be. But those would be more willing to support the company, because there's an attachment over there. It's like the strategics on a different layer. Strategics, will be investing. So at least in my eyes, companies should be able to and would be doing wisely so if they would approach more strategic partners now these days for funding, rather than to look for, VCs, the typical VCs, as a typical process. These are not the typical days.
Speaking of strategics, every deal I've done as a CEO has had strategic investors, whether it's GE or J&J, Boston, Medtronic, et cetera. And I often get the question
Philips.
from, Philips, should I take strategic money? Should I not? What should be the conditions of when I do or don't? Any thoughts or advice? Because I think they are great partners. You got to protect certain things. You don't want first rights of refusal, most of the time. Certain instances you might. You don't want to give up distribution, certain instances you might, or a particular geography. But any thoughts that you guys have that worked well for you?
Yeah, I think, I came when I was raising money, I came from a different perspective, because I came from, after I was the president of Olympus and the president of Smith & Nephew. So I was all for, take strategic money, great partners, they're wonderful people. But I also realized the timing. Then the advice was maybe not in an A round, because you're going to scare off everybody else that if you ever want to be sold. But again, I've always believed
even if there are no strings attached.
Yeah, well, yes, but the thought is, I don't think you should be building a company, or at least communicating that, to sell it. You're building a company for it to be bought or to grow it. It's a very different way you run the company. So if a strategic, I think it can give you some cachet, if you get them early, because it demonstrates there's probably a product market fit, which is the number one thing we need to prove, because they know the market better than every one of us, because they've been out there, right, and doing it and selling it and have had success. Yep. So, but I think the timing is when. If you don't need them early, I would say wait. And they get a little more anxious and they want to get in earlier. But if you can push them off a little, I think that's the best. But I don't think there's a downside to bringing the right ones in.
Early.
Earlier, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I sense that you didn't want them early because it might scare people off. That hasn't
That
been
doesn't
my
scare, yeah, that doesn't
that
scare.
doesn't have been my experience.
Right, it scared people that were never worked for one before.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It didn't, I mean.
I didn't mean
Yeah,
it
no,
didn't
you're
scare
right.
off other VCs.
Yeah.
Right. I've found that
It was other strategics, I was saying, would scare off other strategics from coming in to buy you later on if this
someone else
strategic was on your cap table. That's what I meant. So not other VCs scared off from investing. I think it usually might be a nice thing because they realize, like I said, there's a product market fit. You got Philips on your
my advice
cap
would be
table.
take the money and live to fight another day.
Yeah,
and
I
worry
agree.
about that problem in the future.
That's my point. I agree.
With the caveat, though, I agree. You know, Scott and I were a bit from the same mold here, so we've done it successfully. But what I've also seen is early stage seed money, early stage founders, entrepreneurs, looking at one of the big strategics knocking at their door, and then they giving the jewels of the family prematurely. So I think coaching of the entrepreneur to do it right and be very careful of what you're getting into. Once you pass that and you have a modus operandi with not too many strings attached, go for it, because those people will bring so much expertise on the board, and they may or may not eventually acquire your company, but in the process, it will establish your credibility as well. So I'm all for it.
Any more quick thought? I think, Todd, you said it, and it's a quote that a lot of people use. You don't, sell companies. Companies are bought. Elaborate on that a little more. Do we all agree with that general concept?
I'm in a unique position, and even in a publicly traded company, I'm following someone that was brilliant at selling technologies and forgot more than I'll ever know, and really had a great career. It just didn't happen at this company because it was being built to sell. You focus on different things. Investors know you focus on different things. I believe you lose all your leverage if you start running around saying, we're going to do this, and these. I've seen decks, investor decks saying, I expect these 3 or 4 companies will be the right buyers for us. Just, my opinion, again, that's silly to put on your deck because it just shows that you're focused on one thing and you're looking to get, focus on building the company, and then if you're ready to be bought, even if you can't wait to be bought, be bought. Don't focus on selling, and I think it's a better way to run a business, and you'll run the business, in my opinion, smarter. You'll focus on cost, you'll focus on efficiency, you'll focus on COGS. You won't just focus on getting a product in the market and proving that everyone wants to use it.
Target that then triggers someone to buy
absolutely.
you. You're building something that's scalable and
exactly
for the long run, and if someone comes along during that process, which happens because there's only so many.
It's happened to you guys. It's just my opinion, but I believe that's one of the most passionate things about being, and I can't say it as clean as you. I just say entrepreneur. I don't say entrepreneur. So it's, but I absolutely believe, even if that's your goal.
Biggest takeaway from this panel. I'm going to go back to the U.S. and start saying entrepreneur.
If you just tell people you're looking to sell your company, I actually think you've lost all your leverage the day you say that. Every bit of it.
But as to building up the companies, this is the perfect time when we come up typically now and saying or protecting our investment, towards LPs or whatever, saying wait or don't wait or whatever. But you do need to deploy your capital. But it is a good time, or maybe one of the best times, to really build the company in terms of. Then again, from my perspective, with early stage companies, seed A, sometimes in some cases B rounds. This is the layers that should be brought into the board position, into the advisory board position. Executives with expertise like you guys, the entrepreneurs, and they need you guys. They need you guys to be part of their board, part of their advisory board. There's so much value in terms of the buildup of the company. It's not just the product and the product market fit. Internally, they should be looked and see what are the components, the ingredients, and create those assets after assets. In one of our companies, we brought, in the ophthalmology space, we brought some of the best world ophthalmologists, and then another executive from San Diego, and another one on the neurovascular, one of our different company on the neurovascular side. We brought some executives from the US to be part of that. It's always a matter of time, because in some cases, KOLs would not come if the company is premature. If you don't have enough data, they don't want to risk their reputation. But there will be a point of time for those entrepreneurs of yours that, when you get to a certain stage when you're mature enough, and this is up to your discretion to define when, try and bring those as early as you can. There's a tremendous value, also in fundraising, but in the processes, in the build-up, internally built up, and not just the product market fit.
So one of the, we've been focusing a lot about financing and the kind of tumultuous time we're in, but one of the topics that came up over and over when we were meeting beforehand was that, we've all been in this industry for over 30 years, and we're more excited now than we ever been in our career for the plethora of opportunities that are possible because of everything that's gone on with technology and innovation, from computing power to AI to cloud to sensors, and I can name 30 things that are, computational biology and all the, proteomics, genomics. There's so many incredible things to create new products as well as service models. Here, I touch on that. I want to leave with some optimism as well, because
very optimistic.
We were all excited about the next 5 years and great companies and solutions that were going to come out.
Well, if I may, I think I'd have kind of two suggestions of messages. A message to entrepreneurs, CEOs, but also to the board is go for it. It's a great time, COVID, in the digital health. So many countries in Europe have gained 10 years in terms of psychological adoption of digital health therapies, and it's only the beginning to take advantage of that. Now, to the management, I'd say, under promise, over deliver, execution, COGS, accountability. Now, maybe to the VCs, investors, the older investors or larger funds maybe have weathered the storms over the years. They've seen those cycles so that they know it's a cycle. But maybe for the younger, smaller funds or younger VCs, don't put too much pressure on the management. I think what the management needs right now is tough love. Meaning, yes, tough because the CEOs, CFOs have to focus on execution, but at the same time, love, because putting too much pressure, panicking, may just lead to burnouts and things like that, or just CEOs taking the wrong decisions, not in the best interest of the company. So I think we need to take a distance here and look at this in the bigger picture.
Kind of final thoughts, Todd, or
I think it's
advice,
great time.
Great time.
Yeah. I really do think it's a great time to be in the med tech space, and I say that because if you believe your company is the company and you have the technology, you're going to be funded and you're going to go out there and produce, and you'll find out. And if you don't, and you think there's things we need, go get great people. There's so much talent in this space. People always win more than technology. People and technology never lose, but people win first. You got to get the right people on a team, and if you do that and you believe in the people, your board included, the people that are surrounding you, and your investors, I believe it's a great time, and be open to change. Europe's doing everything in its power to not want medical devices on the continent because of MDRs and all of this, but you know what? Okay, yes, I get it. I have to fund an extra $150,000, $200,000 as a small company, but I actually know that there's this many people here and it's going to deliver $10 million over the next X years, but you got to do it smart. So I got to take from another place to maybe do this. But I find that people just keep pushing things off. Don't do that investment in Europe. Rumor has it there's patients in Europe, so we should probably treat them, right, if we can. Let's get there faster than later. But I honestly, I really believe in technology, and I personally believe that funds have money to invest, but they're only going to invest if you and your story are right. And if you don't believe in yourself, we're probably in the wrong space, and you shouldn't be running a company, right? But I think it's an awesome time to be in this business.
All right, wrap us up, Assaf.
Very, very quickly, but a different approach. I like it totally what Todd just mentioned, but it's, at least in my eyes, is the convergence.
Yeah.
Never in my life did I see something like that. I mean, maybe not 30 years, but maybe 20 years in the industry, that there's an amazing, beautiful convergence of people, technologies, companies, paradigm shift in business models. Instead of sick care, we're moving to healthcare, prevention, prediction. Instead of, all of a sudden we see value-based medicine. AI comes into play. Even what we invest in and strongly supported by the Israeli government, the Innovation Authority, the bioconvergence, biology and physics, biology and engineering. It brings it all together into, this is when I'm saying also it's a different ballgame. Also in that sense, there's so many integration of technologies and people and concepts. This is why it's an amazing game to play at this time, and I fully support that. We just need to be careful, and what I'm repeatedly saying, we need to listen, truly listen to the market, truly listen to the market and adapt and change what is needed.
All righty, well, thank you guys. We appreciate your time and great panel, and hopefully you're leaving with some optimism and excitement because as we established at the beginning, we're the older group and we're gonna need your devices and your solutions here pretty quickly. So thank you, enjoy the rest of the meeting.